Tef, I'll start with you. Encouraged or discouraged by what you just heard?
It's a combination of mixed emotions. As a person that's been on the grounds every day since I heard Michael Brown was murdered, I saw Mike Brown's blood with my own eyes, so I have a different perception of this issue than the average person. I have to say, after the makings of this event, I am discouraged slightly. And I'm working at this every day, but I am a little discouraged, I have to say that.
One of the things that stood out to me was one of the young women, I believe it was, just said she believes as a whole, people just lack empathy. That a lot of what we're talking about starts right there. Did that resonate with you?
It absolutely does. I think it's, of course, difficult to understand other people's lived experience, right? You understand your perception and your view of the world. I think what's unfortunate is that we've seen the realities of people who belong to marginalized groups, people of color, and our realities often made invisible in the conversation, because if mainstream America isn't seeing it, it must not be happening. And so those stories get silenced time and time again. And so I think what we've seen in Ferguson, and as I've been out on the ground with Tef and many others trying to make sure that we are bearing witness to what's really happening, that witness showed me that people want to make sure that we are silenced no longer, and that the reality of living in this country as a person of color is heard and understood by mainstream America.
How? How do we change that empathy, that lack of empathy?
Certainly, one of the things that we talked about is the ways that we could connect. And so one of the things that we noticed on the ground was that people from all different walks of life were there trying to make a difference. And so we at least started having dialogue about what we could do next and seeing each other visible. So I think, the borders and boundaries and streets that divide us, that was an opportunity for us to come together to actually see each other, to know that we're out there and that we could really change the trajectory of what this looks like, that this isn't a moment, that it's a movement. And so I think we're already in motion. What I love about the young people is that they did see that they had voice, and they did get to protest, and they did get to practice that. So that's not something you give up.
That's right.
That's not something you give up.
So is there a voice that's become a leader from a young person's perspective? Do you need that? Do you need multiple leaders? Do you need one leader? What do you think?
I feel like it's a generational thing. I feel like this generation itself is the leaders. When I looked out there, at nighttime, which I felt was the most critical part of the protest, because, it's easy to walk around during the day when there's very little resistance to your action. But the way you could really tell the temperature of a person that was out there is, are you willing to stay out here when it's not easy? And the only people that I saw willing to stay out there when it wasn't easy was young people. And I feel like, if I'm being perfectly honest, the generation before us dropped the ball on this one. They had the support of elders during the civil rights movement, combined with young people. And young people just simply do not feel that support with this issue. And I think that's a problem that is like an elephant in the room that isn't quite often addressed.
So do young folks care if Al Sharpton comes to town?
No, we don't.
I will.
We can't relate to Al Sharpton, that's our parents' radical. We have our own radicals. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. It's been interesting because I've heard a lot of young people ask for mentorship and saying, I've never done this before, I've never fought this fight before, but I know it's important to me, my life, my values, and my community. So I'm going to be out there whether or not I've got some guidance, whether or not I've got some mentorship. At Teach for America, we talk a great deal about student leadership, right? Because if we're truly educating children well, they're not just ready to be the educated generation, but they're ready to be the leaders of this world. And student leadership is out there. They are leading us in those marches. I'm 29, right? So I still think I'm young, but there are people that are far younger than myself who are out there with something to say, something positive to say, something very clear to say, and they're out in front with the signs, leading the marches, coming up with the social media campaigns, coming up with the phrases that are being used. And so I think to Tef's point, it's not about one person emerging or one person becoming a star of this. It's about making sure that we continue to amplify those collective voices.
And so how do they need something to amplify more than a sign? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think they had some practice, right? So making up chants, making up quotes, showing up, continually showing up when people didn't really want to see them show up. That was something. I think the other piece is that we are so basing this off the civil rights era, and that was long before my generation, long before their generation. So I don't think the recipe has to be exactly Martin Luther King-ish, right? So I think there have been some wonderful women leaders that have been out there protesting and organizing as well as the men. And so I think this will look different. I think we need to be open to what the different is. I also think we're struggling with who the leaders are. So we have young African-American leaders who maybe don't look, a certain kind of way, that we're struggling to say, you're a leader. But if you were there and I was there in the evening time, they were leading. And so it's not the clean-cut MLK look, but it is definitely leadership. And so I think we have to recognize that and support it.
On Twitter, someone says they can't count the number of times they've been the only black person in class and been asked to speak on behalf of all black people.
Yeah.
Can you relate to that, and what do you say to that?
Totally. That's my life story. I went to Catholic school. I pretty much grew up being the only black kid in my class all the time. We had a school population of maybe 800 kids, maybe 15 black students. That's my life story. And my actions represented each and every other black student in the school. Their actions represented my actions. I would struggle with what the next person, with the actions of the next person having to do with my actions. I would always wonder, like, what does that have to do with me? And it took me a while to understand that in white America, I am not viewed as an individual. I am viewed as a member of a collective which forms into an individual. And you see that in situations like Mike Brown. Like, people thin slice the situation and go, oh, he was a gangster, he was a thug, lived by the gun, died by the gun. People don't even take the time to dig into the story to even see what really happened. They get fast, quick media ear bites here and there, and they take it and formulate quick judgment stories about what really happened. And that happens to black males all the time. We're stereotyped based upon what you saw on a reality show, what you saw your favorite athlete do, what you saw your favorite rapper do. I might not even listen to rap music, but you're gonna look at me and assume that I do.
I should say, I don't think I said, just for those who don't know, when you're talking about growing up in school, you're from St. Louis.
Yeah.
This is home for
Yeah.
you. Is that back to that empathy question earlier? How do you get folks to have an understanding of a life they've never lived?
I think that's about relationships. So I'm also from St. Louis, actually North County, about 12 minutes from where all of this happened, and had a similar experience growing up in my educational opportunities as Tef did. And the fact of the matter is that when I spent time going to an Orthodox synagogue, that wasn't exactly my life, but at least I had a genuine window that was based on my own experience and relationships that I had built with people over time. And so if we work in such a way that we are building those kind of relationships, understanding that all of our children have value, that all of our young people matter, and get to the place where we can actually start to see every young person as our own child or our own cousin or our own brother, I actually think that will lead to a great deal of positive change. I also just think we need a lot of allyship. And so for people who might better understand, maybe you are the white parent of, the white adoptive parent of a young person of color, right? How are you then bringing that experience to bear for other people who look like you, and actually speaking a language and helping people who share your lived experience, something that they might not understand, but you have a particular window into?
I mean, I'll just say what struck me just watching that piece. There was the young man who said, what did he say? I don't want to sit and think about this all the time. Yeah. And he's obviously talking about his skin color, something that he didn't even choose. We've heard people say, white folks think about race when we're talking about race. Is that?
Yeah, but I think for every mom that was watching, for every mother that was watching, the idea of bearing your child is something that we can all relate to, and the horror that goes with that, right? So regardless of your race, no father wants to bury their child. And so I think that was a place where people came together to say, regardless of whatever you think the facts are, this is a tragedy, and these parents are now burying their young one, and way before time. And really empathize with that. So I think St. Louis definitely has the capacity to empathize. I think that we have to articulate it in a way that people can relate to. And certainly being a parent or being a mother of a child, I think we got that.